to the conversation. I'm Chris.
And I'm Shane.
In case you haven't listened to our show in the past, the premise of the show is I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, I voted for McCain, I supported him financially, and Shane here is a pinko commie leftist Obama bot. And tonight we are going to discuss some of the news of the day. Specifically, we're going to take the time to talk about our opinions on the recent protests in Iran and what we think the Obama administration and the United States government as a whole should or should not be doing about it. I mean, in case you're not up on the news, brief synopsis is that today is Students' Day. It's a day that traditionally is a holiday that Iran uses to burn American flags and burn the current president in effigy. Normally they have these big stage protests by the government in the street. But today, anti-Ahmadinejad protesters and anti-cleric protesters kind of hijacked this process and turned it into a giant protest against the existing Iranian regime.
And I think one thing that you're going to see as time goes on with these protests in Iran is that this is the real destabilizing force within that country. I think something like definitely over half of the students who were politically aware, politically active in the election were for the candidate who did not win, Musavi. I believe that it's probably closer to 100%, to be honest with you, but for sure a large majority. And pretty much all of those people came out and took to the streets after he lost in some questionable circumstances in that election. There's been protests off and on since that time. There's been a lot of difficulty with the crackdown from the government on those protests. Obama and a lot of Western nations have spoken out against it, and it's just one more thing that Iran has to deal with in the eyes of the international community right now.
Now, one of the things those protesters have been doing is that they're not letting this issue slide. Like, if you would have asked me back in June, are we still going to be talking about this in December, I said probably not. They would have cracked down. But the protesters have been pretty successful, and they've gotten some high profile within Iran supporters, including Rafsanjani, a former president of Iran, who has given some support or some opposition to the crackdown. And here they are coming out on this day, like I said, that's traditionally used to protest the great Satan of the world, the United States, and they're using that to protest against the actually existing Iranian government. One of the chants that was overheard today, according to some not most credible, but YouTube clips that look pretty authentic, were chants of Obama, Obama, where are you? Are you with us? Or are you against us? And I think that's the main issue that we wanted to discuss tonight, is the role the United States government and the president should be taking in supporting, condemning, or ignoring these protests.
And I think Obama's basically made his response to that when the protests were at their height, just after the election and the weeks after the election. It was a pretty tense situation then, with the streets just being flooded with protesters and no response from the government. This was before the crackdown. Then when the crackdown started shortly thereafter, Obama spoke out against it, said, this is not the right thing. This is not what you want to be showing the world, and we call upon Iran to do the right thing here. But essentially that's it. I think the larger concern for the Obama administration, probably in my opinion as it should be, is the nuclear issue. And so I think that they realize that if they're going to get anything done diplomatically, they're going to have to negotiate with the power structure that exists. You made a good point mentioning Rafsanjani. He's actually in a position to, theoretically, if he gets the people on the council that he's on to support him, actually remove the Ayatollah. And this is, it's a question of whether or not he could actually do that. But I think that with his support, the movement definitely can gain steam.
I think so. I think we're a long way away from removing the Ayatollah. But one thing I want to point out about the Obama administration is they've been very careful. They've spoken out against the crackdown by the Iranian government using some brutal anti-riot tactics. We all saw the video of the girl being killed in the streets and arresting people using tear gas and beating people using the Bashir militiamen to abuse people. But he has never expressed support for the protesters. He's never expressed support for liberalization of Iran's dictatorial rule. He's never expressed any support, and it saddens me, and it kind of shocks me, because Barack Obama was supposed to be this idealist president that was supposed to bring back this idealistic image of the United States that the world was supposed to have, and this is a perfect opportunity where he could do that, and he could do that in such a way that would...
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I kind of take a different view of the situation. I'm not sure that even the student protesters within Iran are trying to achieve the goal you mentioned of liberalizing their quote-unquote dictatorial system. Now, I tend to agree with you that the power of the Ayatollah is pretty strong, probably stronger than in any other Western-style democracy. They do have a democracy theoretically. Now, that's what the protesters are protesting, is whether or not their voices are being heard at the ballot box. They should be able to elect their own president. Now, they have this system in place, it's because it's a theocracy, where this council selects the head of state, the head of government, and that overrules the will of the people because the president is basically answering to the Ayatollah. However, I don't think the student protesters are actually saying we want to remove the Ayatollah, although you do hear occasional chants of death to the dictator, but I think that's a lot of 18 and 19-year-old kids not realizing what they're saying and the consequences.
Right. I think that these protesters want some basic progress to where their voices are heard. The elections are not rigged because they do feel like the elections were rigged by Ahmadinejad and his supporters, and I think there are grounds for that belief. And they want some basic policies to liberalize the society. They don't want this massive revolution. I don't think we're going to see this turned into an armed revolution unless the Iranian government continues to crack down violently and really destroy what support it has amongst these people. But one thing I wanted to go back to was I think that this is an opportunity for Barack Obama to exert some influence over the Iranian government. If he can, give one of his rousing speeches and kind of stir up some of this domestic unrest, he can put pressure on the Iranian government, and that would demonstrate to them that, hey, we have some power to manipulate some of your internal structure without having to bomb you. Yeah. And that would actually enhance our power.
Well, yeah, I think at this point what you're going to see is and this is the decision I think that the governments of the world have made, is that it's not really feasible to go in and actually take any kind of action to help the protesters. I mean, to the extent that we could do that, we're going to be focusing on the nuclear issue. If we've got intelligence assets in the country, they're focused on that. And it's difficult to do even that. So I think, Obama giving a speech, again, he's trying to negotiate with the power structure that exists. He doesn't want to antagonize those people unnecessarily. As to the protests themselves, I think what you're going to see, this is going to sort of turn into what the protests of the 60s turned into, which is those people kind of grow up, join society, and then have these outstanding grievances against the power structure, and then they're going to join the political movement, the political structure, and you're going to have basically what the protests of the 60s turned into, which is the modern Democratic Party. You're going to have something similar to that, and I think it's going to be the undoing eventually of the right wing in that country.
Well, I hope you're right, and I think it could use some support from the United States. Let me be clear about what I'm advocating. I'm not advocating the use of any of our intelligence assets to support overtly or covertly any of the protesters and the opposition movement there. All I'm suggesting is that Barack Obama use his bully pulpit to show some solidarity, show some support, similar to what Reagan did with Lech Walesa in Poland in the 80s. That's all I'm suggesting he does. And specifically, he has the perfect venue for doing so on Thursday when he receives his Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo. I think he should make sure that a former Nobel laureate, Shireen Ebadi, who won in 2003, an Iranian dissident woman, a former judge, with her. And I think he should talk strongly about what's going on in Iran and how he supports the goals of the protesters, and just go from there and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm not against that. I think he does have to be careful because, again, it's a balancing act. Right now you've got some pretty bellicose statements coming out of Ahmadinejad and the head of the Iranian nuclear program about what they're trying to do. They're beginning to expand their activities there. It's the kind of thing that I really feel like has to be our main focus at this time, although I'm not against Obama saying some words, as you suggest, to sort of support the movement in general. Now, one thing I'd like to say about your comparison to the Soviet Union, I think Lech Walesa, as the head of the labor movement, was in a unique position to challenge the authority and the power structure there. He had a lot of people supporting him because he was the head of such a large organization, and it's going to take organization like that built up over time in Iran to cause and bring about real change. So that's it for us on this topic tonight. We hope you guys enjoyed listening, and we'll be back soon with another take on the events of the day.